Hey folks, it's Abby, and my July wrap-up isn't as insane as my June wrap-up, but it's still pretty decent. I read 7,003 pages across 18 books and 19 hours of audiobooks. My average rating totaled out at 3.8 stars, which is a little lower than it has been, but not too bad. And my biggest book of the month was A Promised Land by Barack Obama at 751 pages, and my oldest book of the month was Mansfield Park from 1814. Now I need to look down at my stats here because I cannot memorise these, but for the rest of my statistics for this month, genres, I read 2 classical books, 2 memoirs, 7 fantasy books, 5 non-fictions, 1 dark academia and 1 sci-fi. My nationalities were 6 English authors, 8 American authors, 1 Emirati author, 1 Malaysian, 1 Danish and 1 Italian. And then finally for the format, I read 7 books via audio, 5 hardbacks, 4 paperbacks, 1 ebook and 1 mixed media where I read it both audiobook and physical book. My audiobook reading is slowly rising and rising each and every month, and I have 0 complaints about this because I'm getting through so many more books and enjoying so much more literature. But I also know that that's not going to happen in August because the Olympics is on, and so my usual audiobook time is now listening to Olympic stuff time. The sadness. But let's get you back to the table and take a look at the first half of all the books that I read in July. I really do need to try and get through this quicker than last time because last month's wrap-up was an hour, so these are going to be short and sweet because I don't want to edit that again and you don't want to watch that again. So first up was Mansfield Park that I read in this big bind-up that is surprisingly heavy, unsurprisingly heavy. I ended up giving Mansfield, I'm going to put it down, you can have the photo again. I ended up giving Mansfield Park 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it, I didn't love it. I think Fanny is a really likeable main character. I really enjoy her. I think she's very sweet, very timid, and I can understand how she's developed that way given the environment that she's in. And the people around her are mainly awful. But it's just not the ending I'd hoped for with this story. I'd really hoped that Edward had kind of learnt more and grown more, and also that Harry had really grown more as a person. Sadly not to be. Next up, my 5-star read of the month, and that is Owls of the Eastern Ice by Jonathan C. Slaught. Oh my gosh, I love this. This was gifted to me annotated by the wonderful Carrie from Caring for Books. Thank you so much. This was a birthday / Christmas present, we don't know for the last batch, but yes, it was a birthday / Christmas present and I adored this so much. It is, well, it says part science narrative, part memoir, part adventure story. That is the best way to describe this. It is an American guy who goes and does research on these really rare fish owls in Russia. And so there is the science of his research into these fish owls, which is absolutely fascinating, and learning about how they capture them, how they monitor them, the information that they're wanting to get from them. But then also it's a memoir, it's his time doing this. It's not just the science of it, it's also telling you about him doing it. And then it becomes adventure story because he's in the wilds of eastern Russia. He speaks Russian, but as an American, and there's so much that goes on. You know, trying to get across the ice before it melts, going into different logging areas, dealing with different groups of people. It's fascinating, it's so good. I couldn't put this down. I had a wonderful time reading it. It's beautifully done. I adored this so much. Men at Arms got 4.5. This is the first City Watch book from the Discworld series that I've really enjoyed. Corporal Claret, I loved him in this, and I loved kind of seeing him accidentally take charge and how that impacted everything. I don't want to spoil it, but it was just so much fun. Considering that this book is from, does my spreadsheet tell me? 1993. It has really good discussions on racism, sexism, xenophobia, everything, and it's just fantastic. The more I read from Discworld, the more that I just solidly love every single book. So I really, really loved this. I love Corporal Claret. Cannot wait to read more. I've already read the Discworld book for August because, obsessed. Then a 4-star read, and that is Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Ames. I had a lot of fun with this one, but I don't think I'm going to carry it on. A few reasons. So this is essentially a band of mercenaries get the band back together again to go and save one of their daughters. Really fun, I really enjoyed it. Moog, favourite character of the entire thing. I think it was just done really well. I had a great time with it and it wrapped up perfectly. And the second book in this series is about a different group of just about related people, and I don't care. Like, I had a great time with these. I think it works really well as a standalone. I've not heard fantastic things about Battle Rose or Bloody Rose or something, whatever the second one is. And I loved this. I don't want to tar it with the brush of a lesser sequel. So this is a great time. Lots of stupid, witty banter and dramatic events that you know are going to be alright in the end, because of course they are. It's this sort of book, but it's still violent. There's lots of blood and swearing and drama. I just had a lot of fun with it. It's just a really fun read. I was going at it with the non-fictions in July, which is partially why I read less books but more pages. This is Notes from Deep Time by Helen Gordon, and it is her kind of introduction to and discovery of geology and geological time. I really enjoyed this. I think it was really, really interesting. She comes at it from a very new perspective, from someone who doesn't know a lot about geology, which as a really bad geologist I appreciate, because she was learning about this, and she actually met her husband in the research of this book, and so he then helped kind of finalise the writing of it up. And yeah, I gave this one a 3.5 stars. I think it really well kind of talks about the development of geology and all the different kind of aspects of it on a base level. I think it's a great introduction to the topic to get people more interested in it, and also this cover. This cover really, this cover helps it, so. 3.5 stars for Seven Endless Forests by April Genevieve de Schalk. I did not realise, somehow, until I finished this book and was looking at other people's reviews, that this was a Sword in the Stone Arthurian retelling. Don't come for me. This was a lot of fun, I really enjoyed it, but the reason it didn't get too much of a star rating is because it was too quick. And that's coming from me, okay? I love my speedy reads, which is part of the reason why I rated this so high. I love blasting through a book. But everything was too fast. We build up for these big moments and they're over in a page or two. We meet someone new and they're considered like a sister to our main character within a page or two. Everything moves too quickly, it's too unrealistic. We don't get enough time on the things that we've spent ages building up for. And yet, I enjoyed it. Characters were fun, I enjoyed the world building, I liked how it linked back to the Boneless Mercies, which I loved. Like, I still did like this book. For now it's going to be staying on my shelves because I loved the Boneless Mercies, but it probably would be getting on hold without that. Not because it's bad, just because I'm trying to only keep my 4-star reads. So this isn't one I recommend necessarily, but if you have it, it will be a very quick read and you'll have a good time with it. And if you've read and enjoyed the Boneless Mercies, then you may as well. Like I said, the non-fiction was non-fictioning this month. Planet Earth 2 by Stephen Moss with a foreword by David Attenborough. This was really fun to read. I've owned it for years. It has photography, sure, from all of the filming that they did throughout the series. Oh, look at the little snake. What a cutie. I don't even like snakes and that's a cute snake. And yeah, it's got loads of photography from throughout the series, and also I just was remembering watching the series as I read this, and you learn a lot more information on how the videographers were able to actually capture the footage of the animals, the difficulties that they faced, so it does add more while still telling you the basic information that Planet Earth 2 gives you. This was a great read. I had a great time with it. I can't believe it was on my TBR for so long. Solid 4-star read. My final book in the complete novels of Jane Austen. I've now read all of them because I read Emma. It was Jane Austen July. I'd read Mansfield Park surprisingly quickly with audiobook, and I just thought, why not just read Emma and have them all completed in this month of Jane Austen? So I did. Emma is probably my least favourite. It's not a bad book. I gave it 3 stars. Potentially on reread I could end up giving it higher. I'll just rest this here, it's heavy. But Emma is just so frustrating and annoying. She meddles in other people's business, usually to their detriment, and she gets this happy ending, and I do think the happy ending's nice. It works really well for everyone, it makes everyone really happy, everything works out nicely. Very glad for that. You can always rely on that with a Jane Austen novel, is that people will be happy at the end. But yeah, the actual reading of the main part of the novel, I didn't enjoy watching Emma meddle negatively in everyone's lives, including her own. So I still give this a 3-star. Like, I'm saying this like, oh my god, it's awful. It's still a 3-star. Austen is still a beautiful, gorgeous writer. I just didn't enjoy it as much as the others. So I finally finished it. I can't believe it. This will go. Am I finished, Cheryl? What? So I finished Jane Austen. I've read all of her works, apart from a couple of letters and things, so I could finally read Jane Austen, her complete novels in one sitting by Jennifer Casius from Running Press Minis. I love these little books. I don't have many of them, but they are so much fun. They are summaries of the novels of whoever they're speaking about. I have here War and Peace summarised in this. They tell you a little bit about the author, then character breakdowns, in this case for each individual book, and then a small summary of the novel, or novels. I really love these. The summaries are done really well and really thoughtfully. Obviously I had just read 2 of the books, and so those were fresh in my mind, and I'll say I think the summaries did a great job. But for the ones that I've read longer ago, some of them 2, 3, 4 years ago, I still was getting really good memories and remembering the full content of the stories for them with this little summary. So if you never want to read Jane Austen but you're super curious about what the books are about because FOMO, this is a great choice. And if you want to kind of just have a little bit of fun remembering, or have something where you can jog your memory about the little Jane Austen books, these are fantastic. I love these so much. I need to get more of them and just have like a mini shelf. Is this an obsessive collection? Potentially. I'm not taking this out the slipcase because whew, it actually came out. Oh, I got kind of excited and terrified there. The golds were screwed up, or I guess half the Voyager screwed up, and made the slipcase too narrow for the book, or the book too wide for the slipcase. But this is The Battle Drum by Sarah El Arifi, and it is the 2nd book in the Ending Fire trilogy. Oh, I was so excited for this. I finally picked it up. I loved this. I ended up giving it 4 stars, so not the 5-star blown away one that the final strife was, which is up there, not that you can see it, that I adored. That one was perfection, and I had been putting this off, being really worried that this wasn't going to be perfection, and it wasn't, but it was a solid 4-star read. I had a great time with this. 4.5, I just checked my rating. I obviously don't want to say too much about this one, but in the final strife we follow 3 different classes of people, and people are classified by their blood types. So red blood is considered the best, then blue, and then clear blood is the slave class, essentially. And we're following someone who actually has red blood, but was switched out for a blue-blooded baby for some of the highest people in the land, so they could be trained to infiltrate, to take down the system. We have 3 different points of view, one from each of the blood types. Our red-blooded main character is a drug-addled I don't want to say assassin, like ex-military kind of, trained to bring down the Empire. Our blue-blooded character, she is actually hidden in plain sight in the heart of the red-blooded community, and people think that she's a red blood and she's training for positions for that. And our clear-blooded character, she is able to get everywhere because no one sees her truly, because she is the enslaved class. And just, oh, it's just done so well. The political intrigue, the magic that's within this world that apparently can only be controlled by red bloods. And the story behind how they have come to this area and why so many people are dying. I really like it. I'm gonna shut up now. It's a fantastic series. I really, really recommend it. The Ending Fire is coming out this year in a couple of months, which is why I finally pushed myself to pick this up. I'm so, so excited, so highly recommend. Then a 3.5-star read, and that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This one is the victim of its own aim. So this is very clearly inspired by The Secret History. Not just because of like things that it says on the front of the book and things like that. If it didn't say this, you would know. If you'd read The Secret History and then you picked this up, you would know it was inspired by it. And unfortunately it doesn't quite reach the heights that it's trying to emulate. Whilst the bad character is just as hateable, and we still have this mainly unlikable cast of characters who are going through education, Rio tries to make them more likeable than Donna Tartt does in The Secret History, and it doesn't work. Like, we're supposed to see our main character Oliver as someone, like, he portrays himself as very selfless, always putting others above himself, but in reality he's actually quite selfish, and so that kind of disparity didn't really work for me. It's hard to say without spoiling both this and also The Secret History, because they are so closely entwined, but I just feel like that the pacing of The Secret History was done better. I read this faster, much faster, but because the Secret History was very slow reading, but I was obsessed with the Secret History whilst I was reading it, knowing I was reading these awful characters. I hated them, I shouldn't like this book, I can't stop reading. Just slowly making my way through and absorbing it. This one didn't have the same impact for me, unfortunately. Most of the time I was like, oh, the Secret History did that better. So I'd read this first. If you want to read them both, I would pick up If We Were Villains first, because I still enjoyed it. I gave this a 3.5 stars. I still think it's a good book, but I think that the Secret History is so good that it kind of ruins it. If you don't know what the plot is about, we start off with our main character, Oliver, and he's in jail. He spent 10 years in jail for the murder of one of his classmates, and things did not happen as was told to the prosecuting system at the time, and now that the detective has retired and he's getting released, he's like, fine, I'll tell you what happened, and then he explains the entire thing. I still did really enjoy it, like I said, I had a great time. This was gifted to me by Hannah from... It came out. From Hannah from the Bookworms Feast, so thank you so much. I did still really enjoy this one. But yeah, awkward one in my brain. Back up to 4.5 stars for my biggest book of the month now, and that is A Promised Land by Barack Obama. So I picked up this and Becoming by Michelle Obama. Can you see it? Just. I picked them up at the same time in a charity shop. They'd both been donated together, so I'm very glad that I finally read them both. This is part one of Barack Obama's kind of time in office, really, so still waiting on part two to be released. There's no publication date yet, or even anything, but there's supposed to be a part two. I enjoyed this. Obviously, I gave it 4.5, did I say? I did, I gave it 4.5. This is narrated by himself as well in the audiobook, which is really, really good, and it starts in his time just before he becomes senator, and then campaigning for senator and everything up until just at the end of his first term in office. And it was very, very interesting to read. Obviously I am British. The politics and the information that I got about Obama's term in office, one, he was in office from 2008, I was born in 1996. So already there's a separation there. I wasn't really old enough to understand what was going on at the time. Also, I was getting a British filtered viewpoint, an internationally filtered viewpoint of his time in office. So we all thought he was fabulous. I know that there were many things that he did wrong. This book obviously is from his own point of view. He thinks that he did the best that he could. He most likely did do the best that he could, and everything does have a positive spin on it. But he also explains quite often, when he's giving examples of certain instances that he's allowed to disclose, he explains the different factors that he had to take into account and how he chose to take those into account and how he then ended up with the action that he took. So whilst you may disagree with the actions that he took in certain circumstances, for certain bills, for certain things like that, he does explain why, and even if you don't necessarily agree, you'll come to understand, and you'll get why that's happened. You'll get why he chose to do this and he chose to do that and he chose to, you know, change a bill so it aligned more with the right. Why would you do that to get it pushed through? And it's a really, really interesting look at his life. He was a very busy man. I really enjoyed it. It's quite readable despite the size, like it looks intimidating as hell. If you can get your hands on the audiobook, do. I was able to listen to it on like 2-3 times speed with no issue, although I always do that with my audiobooks. I'm pretty sure this is the main reason that the amount of books that I managed to get through this month was shorter than last month, because this one is a chonker. It is 751 pages, but I did find it very, very interesting. Gave it 4.5 stars. If you are interested, you will enjoy it. Back to fantasy, and I gave 4 stars to The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This one took me forever to get into. I, again, did a lot of this one via audiobook, and I thought that I was going to DNF this, and that I didn't care about picking up the sequel. It took a while. It took a long while to get into it, and obviously I just read a slow non-fiction, so I was hoping for something a bit faster. Don't pick this up if you want faster, but it is a really interesting and intriguing political fantasy that talks a lot about colonisation and was inspired by the colonisation of North Africa by France. I think everything's done really realistically in here as well. Everyone's actions, from someone who is from the group of the colonisers and thinks that she can help and can better this world and can actually assist these people who have been colonised, but ends up serving her own aims first and therefore causing issues. It's just done really, really well. I'm so excited for the second book. There is magic in here and it isn't really explored much, but the way that it's led up means that it really is there for the taking in book 2, and I'm so excited to see where she's going to go with this and also what is going to happen politically. I don't want to spoil anything, but what's going to happen politically in book 2? Yeah, a very, very slow start, took me a long while to get into it, ended up adoring our main character, adored less our other point of view from the colonizer, not because, obviously we're not supposed to like her, but her points of view were a lot more clinical, whereas our main character, Terrain, was a lot more emotional, and I preferred that. But yes, this, oh, so good. And my edition I got from Gaze the Word when I went and visited with my uncle is signed. Another slow start to a fabulous time, and that is Sorcerer to the Crown by Zensho. This is her first published novel, and so I've actually read 2 different things from her before this one. I read Blackwater Sister and Spirits Abroad. Those both focus on Southeast Asian and specifically Malaysian mythology. This one does not, and it's very different, and I feel like I can tell that it was her first book and her debut because it doesn't read quite as well. Primarily, the pacing. The start of this book is very, very slow. Luckily, unlike with this one, I had already gotten payback from a slow book, so I was willing to do this, and also it's a lot shorter. So it does take a while to get into this. We are following a Sorcerer Royal, who is essentially the head of this magical society in England, UK? England. And he is a black man who was adopted, willingly or not, by a rich white man and brought into the society, and he now is taken over the mantle from this rich white gentleman, and he is now the Sorcerer Royal. So a lot of people aren't happy about that because it is a black immigrant who is now running the magical society. And then on top of this, we also look into, this is also a patriarchal society, and so we're also following a young girl who happens to have very strong magic, but in this society, gentlewomen are told to suppress their magic. They shouldn't have it. It's not something that they are allowed to demonstrate, but hers is incredibly powerful. And there's magical creatures, there's the patriarchy being overturned, there's racism being overturned. I had a great time with this. So I really, really enjoyed this. I am definitely wanting to pick up book 2. Book 3 isn't out yet. I really hope she writes it, because this was just, it was just a really enjoyable time. It was also like a little bit silly, a little bit bantery. That's not a main thing, unlike Kings of the Wyld, like that's not the thing, but it's a lot of fun. I had a great time with this book, and I'm definitely wanting to pick up more from Zensho and also the rest of this series. I'm doing a bad job at doing this quickly. Okay, we've got 4 books left. First up at 3.5 stars is The Wenamak Web by Marie Howelt. So I was contacted by the author on Instagram and they asked me if I would be willing to read this. It's book 3 in a series, the Calibri Investigators, but you can read it as a standalone. I said, yeah, sure, let's give it a shot. It's only like 170 pages. I read this really quickly on my phone and I had a great time with it. This one is filled with ridiculous banter, explosions, space stations, aliens. I had a good time with it. It's your standard sci-fi novella, but I think it's written really well. It's really enjoyable, and I am actually intrigued to go back and read books 1 and 2 now, so I would recommend checking this one out because it was a good, fun time. Unlike the next book, which is Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli, an Italian author, and this I listened to as an audiobook narrated by Benedict Cumberbatch, and it is a non-fiction all about time from a physicist's perspective. How time is measured, how time flows, how we think about time. My physics teacher was, I'm gonna say inadequate, and I feel like that's very polite. So my physics knowledge is very, very bad. So that already wasn't good for the starting off going into this one. And it's quite a complex and complicated topic, and Rovelli uses quite flowery language, which I'm sure to people who are knowledgeable in physics and in this topic of time in physics is interesting. It makes it beautiful to read. But as someone who was listening to it via audiobook, with a lack of knowledge of time specific in physics but also physics, I struggled with this one. It's one of the rare occasions where I've read the audiobook and I feel like I haven't read the book, because I would have spent a lot more time going slower than I've ever gone before reading this book to try and comprehend it. So I don't want to like give it a really low rating because it's me, it's not the book, it's me, but I don't recommend it to any of you that are watching. The vast majority of you read more similarly to me, that's why you're here, and it's not for me. Not because of anything the book's done, just because it's a bit too complicated about a topic that I don't really care about that much. I only picked it up because I needed a short audiobook for the span of time that I had. I didn't want to start a bigger one, I just needed a short little audiobook. This was like 4 hours long, I was like, sure, let's go for it. This is why you stick to your TBR, people. The penultimate book, we are back to a 4.5 and also back to non-fiction. And that is Regeneration and the Climate Crisis in One Generation by Paul Hawken. This was sent to me 3 years ago now, in 2021, by Penguin Environment. Thank you so much, folks. I skimmed through it at the time. It's a big book. This took me a while to read. And I skimmed through it at the time, and I gave it a rating, and I said, yeah, it's pretty decent, and I had a good time with it. And then I've actually read it properly this time. I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I didn't just count that read as a read, and instead put this as like my first time read for it, because oh my gosh, this book is fantastic. Everything in here is actually doable, and the steps are there to explain how and why it's doable. There's a great inclusion and focus on the importance of Indigenous communities, and also in caring obviously for the environment, but in a way that then doesn't negate those Indigenous folks' rights. It talks about the importance of feminism, the importance of working against poverty and enslavement. It talks about the importance of educating children, of educating girls. This is basically perfect. This, like for me, it aligns with all of my views on life, which is basically everyone should be equal and they're not, so you need to do more things for the people that aren't equal because we're the ones that fucked it up, essentially. So yeah, fantastic discussions on different ways that we can do better farming that is actually more profitable for the farmers, whilst also not destroying the food and adding more nutrition into our vegetables and our fruits. I could go on about this forever. I have a really long review of this up on my Goodreads if you want to check it out, and it'll be going up on my blog soon this month. This is fantastic. This is amazing. This is just, it's brilliant. It covers every possible topic, which is part of the reason why it took me so long to read, but it covers every topic. It does it really well. I think this is fantastic. And then unfortunately we're ending on a little bit of a downer with this one, and that is House of Marionne by J.L. This was one of my, oh hello face, this is one of my Goldsborough books. It is stunning, and I picked it up because the email came through from Goldsborough saying that they had the second book. And sometimes I'll just pick it up because I'm interested in the first book and it's a limited time situation. But this second book isn't as gorgeous as this one, like it's just a standard plain hardback with pink edges. So I was like, right, read this. And also, oh, you can get a matching number. They're only doing 500 copies of the sequel and my copy is 696. So no, I can't get a matching number. So there was reasons where I was like, okay, I don't really want to just get this, but what if I love the book? I am gonna read it now, blast through it and see what I think. I'm glad I did. I'm not going to be buying the sequel. There are a few reasons for that. This one is about a young girl who has this black evil magic, and because of that her mother stole her away from the community that they were in that kills people for having this magic and educates those who have the correct type of magic. And they've been on the run ever since, trying to make sure that she isn't killed. And one of their times on the run it goes badly, they are separated, and the only thing that our main character can think to do is to go to her grandmother's house, and she is the person who educates, I think, a fifth of all of these magic. And so she then has to hide her dark magic so as to not be killed, whilst teaching herself to try and use this warmer, lighter, you know, white magic. The world building in this could have been done better, the character development could have been done better, the main character is just mainly annoying. And also they rush through the education side of things. I get that she may not have wanted to focus on that, but unfortunately she has made the book set in a school, and this process apparently takes the vast majority of people a minimum of 3 years, if not more, to go through, and she goes through it in what feels like a month. Like, it may have been slightly longer, but it feels like it's just 1 month. She does what all of these people took 3 years to do. And sure, she might be fantastic and magical and powerful, but she's also suppressing a very dark magic and learning how to do that, and she's been separate from this whole world, so she doesn't know the basics, and she's able to do it in 1 month. It's just really unrealistic. I did find this fun, I did quite enjoy reading it, and if someone put the sequel in my hand and told me to read it, I'd be happy to do so. But I'm not about to go and buy a £25 special edition hardback that isn't even that pretty. I can make my own of a book that I just found okay. So unfortunately this one is on the long term, maybe I'll pick it up, maybe I won't, TBR. I'm only really keeping it because it's really pretty. Technically it got a 4-star rating on my core pile, but I did it just after I finished it, so I think it's actually a 3.5. which would mean that usually it gets on hold. I give myself some more grace with these really pretty books, partly because I spent so much more money on them, so they are allowed to stay a little longer. But yeah, this one I think will really appeal a lot more to the intended audience, which is YA, but also I've read better YA than this. Like, I'm not judging it from an adult perspective and being like, oh, this YA is bad. It's not as great as some of the YA that I've read. I will have just cut out a load of rambling. I was trying to be too nice. Basically, this isn't for me. It's a good story. I think quite a lot of you might enjoy it, but for me, it ain't it. I'm keeping it because it's pretty. You can fight me. These book boxes are expensive. And I'm not going to get the sequel because whilst I'm sure it's okay, I have enough books on my TBR that are more than okay, and I need to get to them first. Oh, my stomach is grumbling. I think I'm hungry after all of that. And those are all of the books that I read this month. Like I said, I tried to smush through them compared to the hour-long wrap-up last month. Obviously I had a lot less books this time, but still. But please do let me know down below if you've read any of these, your thoughts on them, and how many pages did you read last month? I love tracking pages now a lot more than tracking books. This is such a huge bind-up, for example, but it's only 1,220 pages for 6 books, a short story, and a wrap-up on Austen. Whereas these individual books, if you buy them solo, are like 500 pages each. So I always find it very interesting to see kind of how the pages match up. But anyway, no one cares. Let me know how many pages you read in July. Thank you for watching this far to the end, folks. If you'd like to see what I'm hoping to read in August, then you can click up there, and if you'd like to see how I do with my August reads, you'll have to click subscribe and stick around. Catch you in the next one. Bye!